Okay, well, welcome again to the Chart of Accounts and Starting Balances webinar. Today we're going to be going over how to set up a chart of accounts in Aplos. What's the difference between the types of accounts? How do you use these accounts? What are they for? What does it all mean? And then also how to set starting balances in Aplos as well. So I'm not sure where any of you are, if you've registered for the product or if you've been using it for a while. Either way, whenever you register for a trial, once you have an account with us, when you log in, you're going to land here, which is the dashboard. So in an accounting system, there are three primary functions that you're going to do, whether it's QuickBooks, whether it's Aplos, whether it's anything. The first step is to have a good chart of accounts. This will allow you to track expenses, track income, track your bank accounts, track your funds in Aplos. Uh, and then the second step is using those accounts to enter transactions. And then the third step is running reports on those accounts and those transactions that you've entered. And that is those are the three main functions of any accounting software you're ever going to use. And then additionally, on top of that, you've got the different features and apps and whatever else. But for today, we're going to focus on that first step, which is creating a good chart of accounts. So in Aplos, on the left-hand side here, you can navigate to the different areas of the software. And if you click on accounts, you will land here, which is the accounts screen and where you can manage all of your accounts. So we're going to get back to this. One thing I do want to do during this one is to show you the chart of accounts wizard that we've created, which takes you step by step through the different types of accounts and allows you to create all of them that you're going to need in kind of a one-stop shop kind of system. So let's take a look at that. So to access that, you just hit that on the dashboard. And this brings you to the first step. Now, I'm going to explain this stuff, so don't try to listen to me and read at the same time. Your head will explode. But if you want, you can read all of this information. It's got a lot of good detail as to what you're working with here. But the first step here is to set up your funds. Now, what are funds? Well, funds are any way that you want to track money coming in and out of your organization, but also separately from other ways. So, for instance, if you have, let's say you're running a church, right? You've got your general fund, which is where you pay all the bills, where most of the income comes in, but then you also have maybe a missions fund or a building fund or a youth fund. These things are just ways that you spend your money within the organization that at any given time you might need to know, okay, I know my organization has $10,000, but I want to know out of that $10,000 how much is in my missions fund for them to play with. That is fund accounting. So this first step here is where you're going to set up those different funds of your organization. Now, the way funds work in Aplos is they're created as equity accounts, and we can go over that a little bit later. But all equity accounts are typically numbered in the 3,000 range, which we will touch on later as well. So I'm going to create a couple of these just to show you how it's done. So click the little plus button, and you can add the next one. So I'm going to add 3,100. I'm going to say missions fund, and then I'm going to give it a little color. Now, the color is just for your aesthetic pleasure. It has no function in accounting. It's just to distinguish it from something else. So let's add a building fund, and we'll make that kind of a greenish color. And we'll do one more. Let's say, well, let's just stick with what I was saying. Let's do a youth fund. Okay. So let's make that blue. So once you have your funds set up, you can go ahead and click next, and that will take you to the second step, which is where you set up your assets. Now, assets are anything that your organization owns. Okay. So at the most basic level, this is the money in your checking account. For bigger organizations, this could include any sort of accounts receivable, money that you've earned but just haven't gotten yet, or pledges, or any fixed assets, if you bought a building or something like that. Those all qualify as assets, but for our purpose today, we're going to be focusing on just the money in your bank account. So if you have multiple bank accounts, this is where you would set that up. So we've got the checking here, and then we have a new option here, which is starting balance. So starting balance is going to be whatever amount is in your bank account as of the day that you begin Aplos. So if you're starting today and you want to be able to, from today and going forward, enter payments, deposits, track your accounting using our system, then I would recommend looking at your bank account. What was it this morning? Enter that balance. And then going forward, all of the money that you spend or receive will come from or add to that starting balance. If you're backdating a little bit, so if it's July right now, if you wanted to start Aplos as of January 1st, for the whole year, then as of January 1st, enter that date or that that amount on January 1st. That way, everything you enter from January onward would be accurate, coming from that starting balance. So let's put in 12,000. Let's just say I have that. So let's say my starting balance is this, and then you see that my starting balance is this, but now how much is in each fund? This is what fund accounting is. So it's taking that full amount right there and giving it a distribution. It's divvying up your money to these different funds. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this evenly. Let's do 3,000 here, 3,000 here, 3,000 there. All right. So let me set up another one also. Let's say I have a savings, and that starting balance will be 10,000. And let's say I have 5 in general, 1 in missions, let's do 3 in building, and then 1 in youth. Okay. So to recap, anything that you own, these are your bank accounts. Okay. Bank accounts, find out what your starting balance is, and then decide how much you're going to put in each fund to total up to the total in the account. All right. So once you're done, hit next, and we will move on to step 3, which is liabilities. Liabilities is anything that your organization owes. So this could be loans, this could be invoices that you've received from other companies or vendors that have performed work for you and now you owe them money. Basically anything that you owe. For the sake of example, I'm going to go ahead and just leave this how it is. I won't mess with a bunch of liabilities. But if you have them, this is where you can enter those and give them their starting balances. For instance, if you're coming into Aplos and you have a loan for $20,000, you can enter that starting balance there. So let's hit next and we go to step 4, which is income. Now, the unique thing about how Aplos works is every income and expense account that you set up will be linked to one of those funds that you created, so that every time you use it, it not only increases or decreases your checking account balance, but it also comes out of or into the appropriate fund. So if you spend $10 for missions, your banking goes down $10, but also your missions fund goes down $10. So let's create some of those here. So let's say contributions income goes into the general. Great. Let's do 4,100, and I'll say this is missions donations. And then I would link that to my missions fund, 4,200, building donations, and that's going to go into the building fund, and 4,300 will be youth donations. So for every way that your organization receives money, gets money, you're going to want to create an income account for that purpose. And that could be donations, that could be revenue, that could be grants, all of the different ways that you're going to take in money, create an account for it. Okay. So once you have those set up, we can move on to step 5, which is setting up your expenses. Now, this is exactly what it sounds like. This is any way that you spend money, any expense that you accrue for your organization. And you see here, we start you off with salary expense, and that's going to be general fund. So I'm going to create a few more here. So let's say utilities. Oops, if I could spell utilities. And that will also be general fund. Let's also do office supplies. That'll be general. And let's do one more. Let's see. Food and beverages. General. Okay, so on to my funds. Now, which ones do I want to create for my missions fund? So let's say we have an expense called outreach, okay, and that will be for the missions fund. And then for building, let's say that's all landscaping expenses come out of my building fund. And then, 5,300. Let's say materials or something, classroom materials. Let's do that. So any way that your organization spends money, and each way that your funds spend money, you're going to want to create an expense account for that as well. So once you've got that set up, you can click next. And then now step 6 is just a review. It shows you what you've now created. So you can see here that we've got our funds, we've got our checking and savings accounts all set up, we've got our accounts payable, liability just hanging out there, and all of our income and expense accounts that we have set up to be able to track transactions now. And this, my friends, is your chart of accounts. That's all it is. It's just it's a listing of the 5 different types of accounts: your assets, liabilities, equity, income, and expense. And you're going to use these accounts now to track transactions that you record for your organization. So once you're done, you can click next. That will finish you off. And then now you can see that you've got some information to play with on the dashboard. You can see your asset balances, your bank balances. You can see all of your fund balances across those accounts. But then now if you go back to that accounts section, you can see that chart of accounts that you just created. So you can see your fund here. You can add a new fund if you'd like. And then all of your different types of accounts. You've got assets, liability, equity, income, and expense. And just click on a section there to go to it. So some further customization and things you can do on this screen. You can always go back and edit these accounts. If you wanted to retitle it or something, you just have to click on it and then make the changes. You can change the fund it's associated to, and then click update, and that will change that. You can also add account groups. So this is an account group, and you can create new ones. So let's say other fund income. And I'm going to go ahead and add that group. And then you can arrange your accounts however you'd like within those groups. And this becomes helpful on, in reports, to where if you wanted to see the total of a group, you can do that. But it's mainly for your organizational purposes. So let's do that for expense as well. Create an account group, fund expenses. I'll stay consistent. Say other fund expenses, and add group. And then I can drag those guys down underneath that group. And there you go. That's how you would edit. That's how you would add an account group. Change that around, and then if you want to add an account to a group, you would click the little orange plus button right next to it, and say I want this to be grant income, and that's going to link to my general fund. Add account, and then there you go. So, oh, sorry, I wanted to go back and touch on this too. If you ever need to edit your starting balances, those balances that you created in the wizard, you can do so by clicking starting balances up here. And then you'll see there's that 12,000 and how it's spread across my funds, and that 10,000 in the same way. And so you can go back and edit this if you had, misinputted a value and wanted to change that. The only time you won't be able to change starting balances is if you've done a bank reconciliation for that account, and that's which, it locks down those transactions. So just a disclaimer. So yeah, that is the first step of any accounting software. Again, those 3 primary functions of creating a chart of accounts to properly track, the things that you do in your organization, entering transactions with those accounts now, and then running reports on all that information that you've entered. So that is how to create a chart of accounts and starting balances in Aplos. So what I'd like to do now is open it up for some question and answer. If you guys have questions, feel free to submit those into the question field. There are a couple of questions that came through before the webinar began. Excuse me. So I'll answer those first, but I'll go ahead and give you a minute. I'm going to pause myself, and then we'll come back and answer your questions. Thanks.